Ba 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 ba. You might recall about 9 weeks ago, I did a video on Captain Carter, and in the subsequent week, I did a video on T'Challa Star-Lord. My plan was to review every single episode of What If week to week, but the problem was I just didn't enjoy it very much. Obviously, I never did another review for any of the remaining episodes. It was partly because Fright Fest coincided with the third episode's release and I didn't have time to cover it, as well as the fact that with each passing week, I cared a little less. The thought of reviewing every single What If week to week became a chore, and ultimately, to keep doing these videos, I need to be enthusiastic about them and I need to be talking about things that I actually want to talk about. So I made the decision at the end of What If to do a big review of the whole thing instead, and sum up what I didn't really enjoy about it. Marvel's What If has come to be everything I actually detest about the MCU as a whole. In an oversaturated year of content on both the big screen and the small screen, the MCU can't be dropping average shows. Something as shallow and uninteresting as Marvel's What If just doesn't really cut the mustard. What If really disappointed me. So let's dive into each episode and explain why. If you liked What If and you want to let me know why you liked it, then please let me know in the comments below, as well as your rankings for every episode. What episode was the best and what one was the worst? If you strongly disagree with this take, maybe finish the video first, just in case I cover anything that you're going to say. Daniel Craig broke his leg in Spectre. Yes, I know. If you'd have just watched like another 2-3 minutes, you would have seen me say that. But it's okay. Let's get out of the way the things that I did really enjoy. The voice acting, from top to bottom, I thought was pretty good. Sure, some of it was a little bit janky, but overall, the original returning actors and the new voice cast replacing the old actors gelled pretty well, and I never really felt like, even though I was watching Captain America or Tony Stark voiced by someone else, I didn't feel like it wasn't them. They feel legitimate, even though it's not always voiced by the people that you might recognise. It's pretty impressive that they got back people like Chris Hemsworth and Sam Jackson. The other thing I really liked was the animation. I know that 3D style isn't for everyone, but I thought it lent really well to the action scenes, and you really got a sense of speed and power from all of these heroes. And we got some pretty cool fights, like Thor fighting Captain Marvel, or anytime Captain Carter bashed someone with her shield, the Watcher fighting Ultron. All of that stuff looked fantastic and it was a lot of fun to watch. They were pleasing to the eye and there was definitely a palpable sense of otherworldly power. Thor and Captain Marvel got to do their best Dragon Ball Z impressions. Watching Ultron try to eat the galaxy is weird, but good weird.
You've swallowed a planet!
All in all, I have no issues with presentation. The look and feel of this series was spot on. And really my issues are more to do with pacing, a lack of resolution, and a lack of interesting narrative questions throughout. Let's dive into the episodes. You know how I feel about Captain Carter and T'Challa Star-Lord. I did those videos, and if you want to hear me talk about them in more detail, head on over to those videos. In short, I liked them, but felt that other than superficial changes, these stories were pretty much recreations of the movies in animated form, without offering too much in the way of innovative storytelling or something we haven't seen before. I understand the earlier episodes benefit from being more simplistic, and they were clearly designed that way so that audiences could get on board with the premise of the show without it being alienating. So okay, they were fine. Not great, fine. Just before I dive into episode 3 and the rest of What If, I just want to talk about this week's sponsor, Displate. And they make some very cool metal posters. They sent me some, and I'm gonna unbox them and show them to you. I think you'll like some of the designs. Went with a few Star Wars Marvel-y things. What's this one? Okay, so this is the Hulk. Hulk-like metal poster. Pretty sweet. Displate is a one-of-a-kind metal poster that you can hang up on the wall without any screws or nuts or bolts or drilling, which is a plus, especially if you're renting. Got a TARDIS, lovely. 11 screwdriver, got some RTD Daleks, yeah, lovely, and some Gallifreyan. We'll try and take it out of the... God damn it. Oh, what do we have here? Oh, this one might be my favourite. This is really nice. Oh, the Infinity War days. How am I nostalgic for a time that was only 3 years ago? Displate are committed to metal over wood, and they are planting a tree for every poster they sell. And so far, they have planted over 14 million trees. It's actually a pretty good cause, and if you get some awesome metal posters to boot, it's a win-win for everyone involved. To take it back, I think these might be my favourites. Look at this Empire. That's really nice. It only takes 20 seconds to set them up with no power tools, no damage to walls, and ultimately no frustrations. Displate! Right now, Displate is offering my subscribers a mahoosive deal. If you click on my link in the description, you'll get 26% off the purchase of 1 to 2 Displates and 36% off the purchase of 3 or more Displates. The offer is automatically calculated at checkout. What if Earth lost its mightiest heroes? Ironic that this was the week where I stopped doing the weekly reviews, because I think this is far and away the best episode. I think this perfectly captures the promise of the premise of What If, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Not only do all the Avengers die, but they suffer horribly. Tony Stark probably gets it the easiest.
Stark, you okay?
Thor never gets a chance to prove himself worthy again, and then he's murdered. Hawkeye is left to rot in a jail cell for a couple of hours, wondering how he murdered Thor, unable to get his head around how he let the arrow go, and then he dies.
This doesn't make any sense. I don't slip. I don't misfire.
The Hulk fills up like a balloon and explodes, so not very nice, although at least Bruce didn't have to be around for that. And Black Widow just gets tossed around like a ragdoll in a really brutal death scene. It's exactly what would happen if a superpowered character like Ant-Man were to take on a regular person. This episode did a great job of building the stakes, and it was paced really well because we were, unlike the last 2 episodes where it was basically just a recreation of another Marvel film, we were actually going off the beaten track, and we were bringing in like Incredible Hulk and Thor and all these different things, and it was riffing on the canon prequel Fury's Big Week, which supposes that Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2 and Thor all take place in the same week. So it's nice to see that referred to. It's kind of cool, I think, to see Mark Ruffalo replacing Edward Norton in The Incredible Hulk, because I think now with all this multiverse stuff, it's safe to assume that the events of The Incredible Hulk are canon, at least in my head, but they played out with Mark Ruffalo in the universe that we follow, and I think it's okay to assume The Incredible Hulk, Edward Norton, Bruce Banner is kind of like a variant where the exact same story pretty much happened to him on like an alternate Earth. At least that's how I like to explain it in my mind. I've also always loved Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, and post-Winter Soldier Age of Ultron, he sort of dipped out of the MCU consciousness. He's only recently started folding back in with films like Captain Marvel and Spider-Man No Way Home, so it was great to see him finally sort of be the protagonist, if only for a 30-minute episode. And also, he's one of those characters in the MCU, like, he has no powers. Sure, he's like a spy, but he's reached that managerial position. He's getting on a bit, so he's not likely to do a load of punchy punch, smashy smash. So I think that character is perfect for a murder mystery. I also thought the resolution was so good. I was not expecting evil Hank Pym to come out of the woodwork, but I think it makes so much sense, and it feels true to the character in the original timeline. I feel like the Hank Pym in those movies is a bit of a dick, and he's really one more tragedy, one more bad day away from being truly evil. So I could totally see the what if diverging point being Hope's death, causing all of this stuff later down the line. This is also an episode that deals with the divergent point really well, because other than the first 2 episodes, which go into detail in an expository way so that we can get to palette swapped Cap and Star-Lord, this one, you don't know what the diverging point is in this what if until the end. It's treated like a reveal, and it's to typify the story. It also treats the diverging what-if moment in this universe as a reveal to save for the end, rather than an expository introduction, making it way more satisfying. I like the idea that losing Hope would cause Hank Pym to seek revenge in a carefully plotted dismantling of Fury's greatest achievement, all just to spite him and in turn the world. Quite funny, my notes I've got written as auto-corrected Hank Pym to Hank Jim. Chancellor Palpatine! I also thought this played into the fantastic trope that I always love in both comics and adaptations, that if a villain were to have the hero's powers, they would be incredibly powerful and destructive, and it is only because the heroes are the right people who are responsible enough for the task of having these powers that these things don't happen. Like Ant-Man could be doing all of this crap. He could be killing the Avengers left, right and centre, but he doesn't because he's a hero. And it's just nice to see that play out. Like, if someone had Ant-Man technology, it'd be piss to kill off Tony Stark, because he's always taking his armour off, thinking that no one's going to get him. You know, seriously, Hydra. Ever heard of a sniper rifle? It also resolved itself in a way that left me wanting more, rather than with some of these later episodes, unsatisfied. I love that Fury solves the mystery, and then at the end Loki's still like, well, I'm an all-powerful god, I'm still taking over the planet. Of course he would, and they've got no Avengers to stop him. I thought the tease of a Loki-led regime across the world that could only be stopped by a recently defrosted Captain America and a recently returning to Earth Captain Marvel under the command of Nick Fury is a nice little trio, and I could have easily done like a sequel episode of that.
Welcome back, Captain.
So, where's the fight?
I'll speak about this more when we get to the finale.
Evening, handsome.
What if Doctor Strange broke his heart instead of his hands? Oh, God. A lot of people bring this one up in conjunction with the murder mystery one I've seen as being like some of the better episodes. And I have to say, I really don't get it. I really didn't enjoy this one at all. I think it's, if anything, one of the more laughable episodes. I find the whole premise of Christine Palmer being like a fixed point in time that must perish no matter what. I think it's kind of a cool idea on paper, but I think in practice it became a bit laughable. No matter what Benedict Cumberbatch does, no matter whether he takes her like far away from the car crash, a gunman will just pop out while they're having dinner and just shoot them. Like, there's nothing he can do. It just becomes a bit cartoony. Like, you're supposing that even if he drove her 10,000 miles away and locked her in a nuclear bunker and gave her an Iron Man nanosuit to wear, she would still die. Is kind of where it is what it's implying. And it just, you know, for a character like Doctor Strange as well, who is as powerful as he is, it just seems like he could try a million more scenarios to stop it. It kept making me think about Edge of Tomorrow and how that similar plot point is done so much better.
Thank you.
Hold on. 3. Like 3.
In that, Tom Cruise's Cage is trying to save Rita Witowski.
How many times have we been here? How many times?
He reveals to her that no matter what he does in this barn, she's going to die. As soon as he starts up the helicopter, it only happens this one way.
If you start that engine, you die. This is as far as you go.
And I think this is much more effective. They're in a war zone, fighting an alien enemy which is on top of them, and they can only repeat that day. Cage has a much more limited skill set than Doctor Strange as well, so there's far fewer options for him to try out. And because obviously these aliens could pop up at any moment, it makes sense that anywhere you go, anywhere you step in Verdun, in Edge of Tomorrow, is a likely kill box. Whereas the idea of Doctor Strange himself not being able to save one person, even if he does literally anything, even if he avoids the car altogether, was just a bit like, I just thought it was a bit much.
Chance, I promise you we will have a good time.
No. Medically, she's completely healthy. For reasons we can't explain, we are losing her.
And I didn't think it was that interesting, and Edge of Tomorrow's done it better. I also just didn't care for this character getting redeemed. I think part of the fun of What If is you can take a character and their story and push it to like the worst logical extreme. And I just feel like after all of that shit, after like vampirically pulling life force from a load of creatures, he doesn't really deserve to be redeemed, and I didn't need it. We've already got one good Doctor Strange. I don't need another one, but in purple with smoky eyes. What if? Zombies! Ooh. I think this episode dropped the ball the most, because Marvel Zombies is something that fans have wanted on screen well before the MCU. It's an absolute fan favourite, and with good reason, because even if you haven't read Marvel Zombies, it's a really gettable concept. The MCU as you know it, but zombies happen. MCU meets 28 Days Later. Sure, why not? That sounds fun, and I would much prefer it's a what if episode than a full-blown movie.
That sort of seems like overkill.
Having said that, I just think it took every possible route to be as uninteresting as possible with this premise.
Boom goes the dynamite. That was solid burn on all of us.
There's way too many characters that don't get nearly enough time to do anything, and it ends really abruptly.
And once we get this to Wakanda, we're gonna save the world.
Even in the darkest of times, humans will give all to save their planet.
I actually couldn't believe how this episode ended. I was sat there like, what? That's it? Like, it felt like half of an episode.
What?
A lot of the episodes have that problem where they end just a bit too soon or a bit abruptly, or they have like a weak third act. But this one just took the biscuit. This one's not even a complete episode, it's half a story. This was the point with What If where I was starting to get really bewildered and I was not enjoying it, and I'd stopped watching it when it would drop on a Wednesday. And it was actually my good friend and sometimes editor, who you may recognise, Harry Bagg, who described to me the Vision Scarlet Witch dynamic, in which Vision would bring people in, would lure them in and get them to trust him, only to use them as food for zombified Scarlet Witch because he loves her. And I was like, yes, that sounds fantastic, I need to watch that right away. Unfortunately, the episode was nowhere near as good as that. As he warned me, he was like, I've made it sound better than it is, it's still just okay. I think the episode could have benefited from being a bit more stripped down, like take a leaf out of The Walking Dead pilot or 28 Days Later, and just have it be one character discovering this apocalypse. I don't think they needed to meet a whole cast of people, and you know, as much as it's funny to see Paul Rudd in the Futurama jars.
I know what you're thinking, I've lost weight. Thank you for noticing.
He didn't need it. I think it was smart to lean on Bucky for a lot of this, and I think he could have easily have been the lead. You could have had him wake up and be by himself for a majority of the episode, or maybe meet one or two characters. The fact that it ends where it does says to me that it should have had way less fat on it, and it should have been like a more stripped back, spectacle-driven survival narrative. Too many of the heroes survived, simply put. I think it would have been more fun if Bucky had kept sort of like bumping into heroes, only for them to get awfully torn apart. Seeing him take the shield was cool, but I could also have had him collecting other items from the dead heroes. You know, maybe it would be a bit too fanboy, but I could totally see, like, you know, he's wearing the Falcon wingsuit. Maybe you could add Hawkeye's bow or Black Widow's tasers as well. Maybe even something from Tony Stark to signify that they patched up their relationship.
Sorry, pal. Guess this is the end of the line.
It turns out that a lot of the episodes were actually plotted as like 35 to 45 minutes, according to head writer AC Bradley, but because of COVID, they had to strip a lot of them down, and that seems to explain why a lot of them end abruptly. Now, obviously, I don't know if AC Bradley got the final say on when the show was going to be released. I would imagine they would have no say, because, like, you know, as someone like Stephen Moffat's pointed out, when he always got dogged for his Doctor Who scheduling, the showrunner doesn't necessarily have any say in when these things go out. A lot of the time, they are just tasked with making them, and then it is the studios, the higher-ups, that decide scheduling. If AC Bradley was put in a position where it was sort of like tough, you just got to finish these things, you got to strip them back, and unfortunately, you know, it would be great if we had 45-minute episodes, but instead we're going to get 25-minute episodes, then I really feel for her, because it must be so frustrating to have all these great premises and then have them end just like, just so unsatisfying. To mention Moffat again, it really reminds me of Doctor Who Series 7. When you have week to week an entirely new sci-fi premise that needs a lot of exposition to explain, you end up going through the motions trying to catch the audience up, and then you only have like a finite amount of time at the end to wrap things up in an engrossing way. And I think with Series 7 and with What If, that was across the board. Like, there'd be something interesting, there'd be a premise you could get on board with. As soon as you're quite up to speed with it and we finally get the chance to really dig into the characters, it's over. Or like there's a really quick and easy reset button solution to the whole thing, which just makes you feel like you've wasted your time. There's already so much Marvel content in 2021 that What If could have easily been pushed back into 2022. I would have preferred longer episodes with more polish, but more on that in a bit, because we are of course going to cover the missing episode.
What? I like anime.
The What If Killmonger episode, I didn't really think was that interesting, because I don't think it really diverged from the Killmonger of the movies enough. Eric Stevens, it's kind of basically what if Eric Stevens' plan went better for him, and he actually did get into Wakanda and become the Black Panther and succeed in killing T'Challa. Everything that this episode does, Black Panther's already done better.
Must feel good. It's about 2 billion people all over the world that looks like us, but their lives are a lot harder.
All over the planet, our people suffer because they don't have the tools to fight back.
Wakanda has the tools to liberate them all.
If you're gonna go down that route, it needs to say something equally as engaging. And it just didn't. The sort of discussion about race is very thin.
Gang violence.
Weapons in the wrong hands. Wish no one had to fire them at all.
Him getting close to Tony and then subsequently just tricking him and killing him, I think is the least interesting narrative route you could have taken. Like I was when they started to get close to each other and get to know one another, I was sort of expecting we would see sort of a bit more nuance to Killmonger, because obviously, you know, he's coded as a villain in the movies, but there's anti-hero elements, and obviously, you know, what's interesting about that character is he has that Magneto quality of you understand why he does what he does.
No tears for me?
Everybody dies. It's just life around here.
So I thought this was a really good opportunity to expand that, and I kind of thought where it was going was he was going to use Tony's middle class influence on the country and the fact that he owns a company with this much reach and this much power to actually incite positive change. The outreach centre that T'Challa establishes at the end of Black Panther, that was the kind of thing I thought they would be aiming for. You know, I think Killmonger is much like that Hank Pym character, is like, he was just that one bad day away from being a villain. And I think there's more than enough to chew on with that character to sort of suggest, like, you know, in a what if scenario, maybe he could choose a brighter path. So it just seemed a bit like pointless to see him kill Rhodey and Tony and T'Challa and get into Wakanda with Iron Man's like mech technology. I just was like, why are we here? And on top of that, I just find it completely ridiculous that Killmonger would ever kill Tony Stark, would ever be able to, with or without the Iron Man suit. And the reason for that is because Ghostface Killer would definitely have stepped in and stopped Killmonger and beaten him up. There's no way Iron Man's #1 fan would let Killmonger kill him. Ghostface Killer versus Killmonger. Killmonger would get fucked up, I'm sorry. Be Deadmonger, that's what he'd be. What if Thor was an only child? I think this one was kind of like one of the less popular episodes because it was kind of comedic and it was ultimately very inconsequential, and the Thor in this timeline isn't too different to the regular Thor. But it ended up being one of the ones that I liked the most because I think it has some of the better pacing in the series. The situation is quite light and fluffy, yes, but it does manage to resolve itself in a satisfying, well-rounded way within the runtime, whereas a lot of the other episodes kind of buckle under the weight of their ambitions. And you know what, like, after a load of like darker premises, it's fine to have something a bit more fun. I liked the idea that Thor without Loki is not the best Thor he can be, and he becomes this like party maniac. And I love the idea that he just brings everyone to Earth for a gigantic throwdown. It feels like a little bit like an episode of Rick and Morty. In a conversation with Deadline, AC Bradley said that one of the mandates behind this episode was a Captain Marvel versus Thor fight, and they sort of spun out the story from there, which I don't think, to be fair, is the best way to crack a story, particularly like when you have a premise like What If. But having said that, it comes together in a way that I enjoyed, and I think it's one of the ones that, like, if you said to me, oh, do you want to stick a What If on, I'd probably say this or the Murder Mystery, honestly.
Libations, crudité, baked goods.
Topaz, what do I always say? I love cake.
Party Thor is a complete, if inconsequential, package, which I would much rather prefer over Zombies ending where it ended.
The survivors of the nuclear fire called the war Judgment Day.
What if Ultron were to win? Yeah, I gotta say, fully down for Terminator MCU, fully down for John Connor Resistance, Hawkeye and Black Widow, when everyone else is dead and Ultron's completely taken over. But unfortunately, we don't really get enough time with that premise because it is superseded by things like the Watcher having a throwdown with Ultron. And as I said earlier, great scene, but when you've got 25 to 30 minutes, like, just stick with one aspect of this and explore it in a thorough way. The design of Ultron in this episode could sum up my problem with the show and its superficiality. You've got that Ultron design where it's the Paul Bettany vision, supposing that he actually managed to succeed with his plan in Age of Ultron and he's moved into the vibranium body. That looks awesome. And then he's also got this Ultron armor over the top of it, which sort of evokes a Tony Stark power armor, and it has like the original Ultron mask. It's overall an absolutely stunning design, and I love how it combines Vision and the original Ultron aesthetic. And just looking at a design like that, or looking at a design like Captain Carter or T'Challa Star-Lord, it's the kind of thing that it makes for a great piece of art, and it makes for a great image, and it's the sort of thing that, you know, if I was back on the playground, I'd be coming up with all these different imaginary scenarios involving these characters and wanting to smash these action figures together. But in actual practice with the story, it amounts to very little. I don't need, like, Thanos swapped out by Ultron with a similar story beat.
Fascinating.
Which brings me to the What If finale. I don't understand why everything had to fold in on itself to get here, and I think it actually, like, makes the series as a whole even worse. What if a premise where you could go anywhere? You can make it as weird and wonderful as you like to your heart's content, and it settles on a premise where a group of unlikely heroes are brought together to stop a universe-ending threat involving a megalomaniacal tyrant collecting 6 Infinity Stones to cause untold destruction on life as we know it. Why? We've had that already. Not only have we had that already, but that was the entire crux of the MCU. That's what everything was leading up to for over a decade. Like, Uber Ultron is great, but I would have much preferred to see him do something else. Again, like, you've got this whole Terminator premise. Could Ultron have been trying to wipe out, for example, like, all organic life, or could he be looking to replace life with synthetics? Could he have, you know, like, I think there could have been something a bit more Terminator-y / Matrix about these episodes that could have dug a bit deeper into the relationship between man and machine, and the fears that surround AI ultimately destroying us and all these kinds of things. Instead, it just becomes, once again, about aesthetics, about saving the day in time for tea, about cracking a few jokes, and you know, don't worry about it, really. Across What If, there were a few cliffhangers, and 2 of them really intrigued me, and I really wanted to see them wrapped up in a satisfying way. The first one was at the end of the T'Challa Star-Lord episode. We caught up with Ego, and he's introduced himself to an Earthbound Peter Quill, and it seems like he is going to try and get him to embrace his dark destiny. When we come to the finale, T'Challa swoops in, grenades Ego, and saves Peter Quill. And then there's a shot of them at the end using the quad blasters, having a great old time. I think that's really weak. Because again, you've got this wonderful what-if premise. You can do anything with Peter Quill. I would have loved to have seen a Peter Quill that was earthbound and didn't become anything special, to be very bitter. And when he's presented with the chance to be somebody and to be somebody incredibly powerful alongside Ego, I think it would have been great if he'd have taken him up on that. And we could have had T'Challa Star-Lord's ultimate nemesis be the original Star-Lord, Peter Quill, except he's got all those godly, like, Earth terraforming powers from Guardians 2. That would have been an awesome battle, and I would have loved to have seen T'Challa sort of like assembling a team to stop that even. The second one was the one I mentioned earlier, the Loki regime of Earth with the two Caps and Nick Fury trying to mount some sort of resistance. I thought that was interesting because you've got an interesting power balance of Loki taking over the Earth. All the heavy hitters on the Avengers are dead. Cap's, like, you know, obviously like got powers, but he's not going to be able to take on, like, Loki when he's already taken over Earth. So Captain Marvel kind of comes in as the ace in the hole there.
You need an ace in the hole. Mine's Harvey.
What if is the chance for characters that haven't met each other before to forge relationships that we perhaps never would have gotten. Any of the relationships in this series that involve Cap or Iron Man are particularly interesting because obviously they've departed the main MCU. We're not going to get to see them interact with any of those characters on screen. So something like What If is a chance for, say, Captain America and Captain Marvel, two characters that didn't say an awful lot to each other in the live action space, to finally have a relationship. Captain Marvel and Captain America hanging out is something I always wanted to see before, like, long before they even cast Brie Larson and made those Captain Marvel movies. So it was disappointing in Endgame when everyone comes together and they say like a couple of lines to each other. So I thought, great, What If is finally going to give me the two Caps, Nick Fury, fighting Loki. That sounds really interesting. Instead, what happens is we go back to this universe as a way to resolve John Connor Natasha's story, and that's it, really. And also, not only that, but it doesn't look like they're really fighting in a very oppressive regime that's destroying the Earth. They're just kicking back on the helicarrier, fighting a bunch of Lokis. It looks like they've got it. It looks like they've got it down pat, really. And then we come to the missing episode. I think this is the number one reason why they should have pushed back What If into 2022. Aside from the fact that the episodes had to be truncated, there's a piece of the finale puzzle that is entirely absent. When we see Gamora and Tony Stark in the finale, it is cut in a way that is meant to be implied that we had a story with them before.
Gamora, survivor of Sakaar and destroyer of Thanos.
And the one who's about to kick your moon-shaped ugly mug?
It's not a scene where we are introduced to this Gamora and this Tony Stark. It is a scene where we are reunited with them, and it sticks out like a sore thumb because all the other characters had set up apart from this Gamora. Not only that, but again, like what I was saying about seeing relationships that didn't play out, the Infinity War trailer back in the day implied that Gamora and Tony Stark were going to interact, and they never met.
I'll do you one better. Who's Gamora?
So to see a story where they get a rapport was something I really thought was going to be cool. And also, I love the idea of doing Thor Ragnarok, but with Tony Stark, and to see him sort of create a Hulkbuster power armor with Sakaarian tech. We also know that obviously Gamora is going to end up in that awesome Thanos armor, so presumably Thanos factors into the Ragnarok episode in some way. It's certainly now my most anticipated episode for Season 2, but at the same time, I'm not really sure if I'll be lining up to watch Season 2. Am I being too harsh on Marvel's What If? I would definitely say, no, I'm not. I know some people will say, oh, they're just 30-minute cartoons and they're meant to be disposable fun. And I'm like, yeah, sure, no, I do agree with that to some degree. But I also think when Disney have yielded the amount of profit that they have from the MCU and have now elected to put out so much content this year, it is impossible for anything to gestate for longer than a couple of weeks before the next Disney Plus show or movies come along. I really think these things need to be like the dog's bollocks. I'm an MCU fan, and for years I've seen talk of superhero fatigue and felt, well, that's not me because I'm really enjoying them still and I'm along for the ride. But I definitely think in 2021 it's been sort of a moment for me where the bubble is starting to burst. I'm absolutely fine with 2 movies a year and maybe even a Disney Plus show or 2, but to have WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki, Marvel's What If, Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi, Black Widow, and Hawkeye is just way too much. Way too much. I think a lot of these shows and films would have been received better if they were more spaced out. We could have easily done with maybe, say, WandaVision, Falcon, Black Widow and Shang-Chi this year and nothing else. And I understand that nothing came out in 2020, so in a way it feels like they're kind of playing catch up. The sheer amount of films and TV shows means that quality almost becomes null and void. I liked Loki a great deal, and WandaVision and Falcon impressed me in certain aspects, but it all starts to become a nebulous mess. And when something does disappoint, like the Falcon Winter Soldier finale, it stings even more. I almost feel like the poorest moments in 2021 at MCU are more memorable than what's good. Because when you're being bombarded, you start to really resent just okay, just fine, average, run-of-the-mill. So I'm hoping the next iteration of What If has more room for the stories to breathe, gives us intriguing twists and turns that make full use of the creative freedom provided by the premise, and keep up the excellent standard of animation. The most exciting What If is surely What If was good. Just before you guys go, I would like to make a little announcement about my Patreon. For years now, I've been doing Patreon in the same way, offering kind of like little rewards and stuff for each tier, like early access or like sending out the scripts. But, you know, I find more often than not, people don't really engage with this stuff, which is absolutely fine because it's just stuff that I dump onto there for you to sort of honour the different tiers. But I think it's apparent to me and from all the wonderful patrons that I've had over the years that I think people just give money to my Patreon because they want to support me and they want to see the videos continue. And like, I'm absolutely fine with that. And also like, I find it hard to meet the deadlines of certain things. Like sometimes I don't send in a script, or sometimes like I need to get a video out by a certain date to meet a sponsor and I've not had time to finish the early release. And for that I apologise. When it gets to the stage where people aren't really engaging with the rewards I offer on the tiers anyway, and it seems like people just want to support the continued growth of the channel, which I'm very appreciative of, I think it's just high time that I just take away all of the rewards. So basically, if you're someone that already gives money to me on Patreon and you feel like me taking away these rewards takes away the incentive to give me money, then stop giving me money. That's absolutely fine. I honestly, like, anyone supporting me at all with $1 to continue this channel, I find incredibly humbling, and I'm forever appreciative of it. But yeah, ultimately, the Patreon is one of those things that I find really hard to keep up with, and I find sometimes it eats into my time trying to get these videos out, and I would rather just be honest with you guys and say that if you want to support me, you can put in any amount of money you want. I'm a one-man show and I'm trying to make the videos happen, the Full Fat podcast happen, and I'm also trying to continuously make digital art on Instagram. And between those three things, it's really hard to then also keep up the Patreon as well for something that like people don't really even seem to be that bothered about. And honestly, I'm fine with that because the way I see Patreon is that it is just an outlet for you to help support the continued, you know, running of this channel. So yeah, thank you for giving me Patreon money. If you've never given me any Patreon money and you would like to become a patron to help keep the lights on, then please consider going to the link in the description, and I'd really appreciate it. But yeah, as I say, from henceforth, there will be nothing really fancy that I can offer on Patreon because I honestly just can't keep up with it, and I don't think anything I offer is really that worth it for you guys. It's also things that I would just happily give out for free, you know, like I'm happy if people want to read these crappy scripts. The other problem is, since I've been doing more stuff on camera, the scripts have been getting a bit more like notey. So as an incentive for me to give out the scripts, that's kind of dwindling as it is. It doesn't really make much sense for me to give out the scripts anymore because now they're more improvisational. In short, if you're already a patron and you want to keep giving me money, thank you, I really appreciate that. If you're someone that feels like you're going to be shortchanged from me taking away the rewards and you don't want to give me money anymore, that's honestly absolutely fine. I completely understand that, and there's no bad blood here. And of course, if you're someone that's never used my Patreon before and you would like to get involved so that I can keep making these videos for you, then please hit the link in the description below. But all you're going to be getting is more of this mug. I also kind of want to reposition the Patreon as sort of something that supports not only Full Fat videos, but the Full Fat podcast. But am I like... I don't seem laggy.
You seem fine.
Because Charlie's very silent. I can't tell if it's like he's delayed or not. And my Instagram page. If you want to support me doing any of those things, then Patreon would be a really good help for me. A big thank you to my Full Fat tier patrons, Dr. Cheekade and Craig Hurst. If you want to find me on Instagram, you can find me at full_fat_videos. And if you want to find me on Twitter, that's at fullfatvideos. Until next time, do something with milk, I guess.